Hello, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. John Kelly, profiler here, and welcome. Welcome to our continuing series on the Golden State Killer, the beginning of the In series. And as in all our series, I have to say that everybody is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. With that being said, we want to answer your questions. I mean, you guys have been giving us a lot of feedback, and we've gotten some really good questions from you. We've gotten some questions about, did the Golden State Killer stop killing? Would he stop killing? I believe firmly that the Golden State Killer continued to kill, but at some point he did stop. Now, when, I don't know. But we have to look at some other people to try and maybe get an idea of what's going on here. So if we look at the Golden State Killer and we think he did stop killing, we would call that a cooling off period. In our business, when serial killers stop, we call it a cooling off period because we believe they can start right over again, at any point in time, as soon as their switch gets flipped. When we're looking at the Golden State Killer, I got to compare him with BTK, and I've got to compare him with the Unabomber. With the Unabomber, we're looking at maybe a 7-year cooling off period, pretty long cooling off period with the Unabomber. And we have to believe that he was getting his emotional needs met somewhere else. We understand that possibly there was kind of a relationship, a kind of a crush kind of thing on a librarian in a small town out in Montana. And maybe he was getting the nurturing that he needed from her. I don't know. The next person we have to take a look at is BTK. BTK cooled off for approximately, 14 years in there somewhere. And that's a pretty long cooling off period. That's a major cooling off period for anyone. And you have to ask yourself, where was he getting his juice? I mean, if he was able to cool off that long, even though he's having these urges and cravings to go out and, bind, torture, and kill, I mean, how was he able to cool off and not do this? And I have to look at his juices being fed by, his relationship with his wife, them having children, fear of getting caught. I think that encompasses a lot of different serial killers. They have that certain fear that, they might be put in a cage where they may end up on a gurney. And BTK went on for quite a while. Now, don't forget, this is all about power, control, domination. So he was getting a lot of power and control from his job because he was able to, write tickets. He was a supervisor, pretty much ordinance supervisor of the town, and was able to hand out different tickets for people that broke some of the planning or ordinances that he was to enforce. So he felt a lot of power and a lot of control in that position. We know that. But also, he's at home. He's got the family. You wonder how that plays into it. And then eventually, we're looking at a situation where he's the president of his church. So he got a lot of esteem with that, got a lot of praise. That certainly boosted and fed his ego. And that was all the power and control that he seemed to need. Now that went on for a long time, but as we know, that was coming to an end because eventually that got boring to him and he was getting ready to go out and, start to kill again. In fact, he even started taunting the police. That's how he got caught. Eventually, what happens is that their narcissism and their egomania, which is one and the same, ends up getting them caught. We call it bulletproofing, where they feel they're bulletproof. They're like Superman. Nobody can catch them. They're smarter than everybody. So those are three people that had very long cooling off periods. In fact, let's throw Gary Ridgway in there too. Gary Ridgway had major cooling off periods compared to the rampage that he started back in the early 80s. I mean, I think he was averaging 2 victims per week for a long time. I mean, we know that they just found some additional victims. So, we're talking probably 49 they know of by now. I think he pleaded out to 47 back in the day. Bottom line here is, when you look at Gary Ridgway, you look at BTK, you look at the Unabomber, and you look at the person of interest here, Joseph DeAngelo, Golden State Killer. Supposedly, those 4 people were not substance abusers. Now, we've checked on DeAngelo. We know he has 1 DWI that we're aware of. All right? So I have to say, okay, one time can happen to anybody. Bottom line, I don't see this pathological substance abusing addiction going on. So with the 4 of those guys, I think they have had pretty long cooling off periods because they were non-substance abusing serial killers. Now let's take a look at substance abusing serial killers. Okay? We have the cannibal of Milwaukee, Jeffrey Dahmer. He was a full-blown alcoholic. He got thrown out of the service because of his drunkenness and his drinking. We have him going on to be drunk most of the time after he'd get out of work, hitting the clubs and drinking hard in the clubs, and then focusing on young male prostitutes and getting sloppy with it. And that's how he got caught. One got away from him. In fact, a couple got away from him. Early on, the police didn't follow up on him. So he could have been caught a lot earlier, but this sloppiness of ingesting the great uninhibitor got these guys caught. Let's look at John Wayne Gacy. Big time marijuana smoker, big time drinker. John Wayne Gacy was so inebriated, so emotionally out of it, he invites the cops into his house for coffee. He's got approximately 30 bodies in the basement. That house reeks of death. He doesn't smell it, he's used to it. He's drinking and using all the time. The cops come in for a cup of coffee, he invites them in, they pick up the smell. Next thing you know, they're back with a search warrant, they search the whole house. And that's the end of John Wayne Gacy. He ends up getting convicted and he gets a date with the needle and the gurney. So that's the end of him. And then the other one we have to think about is Ted Bundy. Whether you know it or not, Ted Bundy was an alcoholic who attended AA pretty much up until they put him in Old Sparky, and that was the end of him. But his substance abuse caused him to not have that cooling off period. None of these guys really had a cooling off period because when they get that big uninhibitor in them and they get strung out on substance, they're out of control and they can't stop. They have no discipline. They, who are so focused on having power and control over others, are out of control themselves and don't even know it. So this is how they get caught, and they get caught sooner. So when you take a look at Bundy, when you take a look at Dahmer, and you take a look at Gacy, you've got substance abusing serial killers. And that can have a big difference. Of course, the best cooling off period for these guys is they either end up dead when they end up getting arrested and they get put in a cage for the rest of their lives. But we just wanted to give you those tidbits on the research that we're involved in and what we're doing, because you should know about this and you should have insight into this. And it might answer some of your questions on if they were active, if they're not active. Always look to say, what do we have here? A substance abusing serial killer or a non-substance abusing serial killer? Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much for all your great feedback and support. And thank you so much for your subscriptions. Please continue. Have a great weekend and stay safe out there.